Hello and welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Riches. This week I'm with Sue Middlehurst, Principal and Chief Executive of Grimsby Institute of Further and Higher Education since 2011. Sue, welcome. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
What would you describe as the purpose of Grimsby Institute? What's your mission?
I think that the overwhelming mission really is to develop skills for the community, for young people and for adults, to support employers in their agenda, but overwhelmingly to help our community be employable.
So it's very much an economic impetus here. It's it's a vocational creation of people capable of taking on the work on the Humber Bank.
Yeah, I think that's our main aim. I think there's also other kind of softer, kind of, if you like, objectives where I believe for any age that education can really enhance people's lives and add value. But I think because of reductions in funding, it's kind of driven us to be much more focused on skills.
Well, let's just talk about the skills side of things first. The Cities Outlook report that came out in January this year from the Centre for Cities Policy Institute, it was unkind to Grimsby. One of the things that it came up with was that Grimsby has the second lowest percentage of high-level qualifications among the working age population, with only 3.9%. That's over the last 10 years. What's the Institute been doing?
Well, you know, I found that report really puzzling. I found that report puzzling on a number of fronts. I mean, we have very successful university centre. You know, annually approximately around 2,000 students on degree programmes from level 4 up to level 6 and progressing on to University of Hull and other partners. And most of those are local people. So I did find it quite a misleading, I think, statistic and kind of didn't really totally understand it. Because the other thing that confused me about that report was that I think our economic prospects are good in Grimsby,
well,
and yet that report didn't reflect that either.
I think the authors of that report would acknowledge the fact that they were talking about the past and over the last 10 years, and there was very little reflection about the future, which is what I want to mention now, because we're all very aware of the renewable energy sector on the Humber, and Grimsby Institute is working to make sure that those jobs go to Grimbarians and not to Danes and the Dutch. What are you doing towards that?
We've been working on the renewables agenda for a while, particularly with some of the companies within especially on the Humber Bank. And in order to kind of start to really facilitate that, we've opened our own academy. And one of the pathways for 14-year-olds is actually engineering stroke renewables, to actually get them engaged in renewables, to understand what renewables is, but more importantly, develop the high-level skills that they're going to need in order to be successful. Because what the employers are saying is that we are not turning out particularly young people with those high-level skills, and we just need to spend more time on it, I think, with them.
And what sort of time scale are we looking at for the development of those courses?
Well, we've started now, age 14, we started in September, but they will be on those...
For people aged 14?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, but it means that they'll start that at 14, but they won't finish till approximately well, they may either go on to vocational engineering programmes or A-levels and then hopefully move into a foundation degree or a degree. So it'll be probably their early 20s before actually they finish through, or unless they combine it with a part-time job.
So in 6 or 7 years' time, the people running the renewable energy sector on the Humber will have been largely educated at Grimsby Institute one way or another.
Well, we hope so, because we certainly worked with them and to understand what they're looking for. Quite a lot of learners that we work with, predominantly it's engineering, computer science and high-level maths that they're looking for. And we work with lots of our learners on kind of educating them to that level. Unfortunately, quite a lot of them don't necessarily want to do the higher level, particularly the high-level maths. And I think that the opportunities are fantastic, and it's working with them those young people and adults to understand the potential opportunities, because I think once they get motivated, they're more inclined to do those high level courses, but they are very challenging courses.
We have a wide, a very large area of people to recruit from here, a territorially large area. You have at Grimsby Institute, but you do have rivals. There's this new college setting up in Scunthorpe, which is also going to be training people for the same renewable energy sector. Is there competition here on the South Bank for students?
No, I think that the University Technical College is, I would say, a little bit of equivalent to our academy. And I think that there's a lot of work if we're going to make a difference to our community. And I think there is a project called the Humber Campus, which includes all of the colleges in the North Bank and South Bank who are working together on a project for renewables. So I think that the success will be about collaboration for our community, not competition.
A wider question, perhaps, that you mentioned that it's so important to train people for these economic circumstances that are going to come, that are the future of this region. And you talk about higher maths and getting them to do the sciences, the engineering, the mechanics, and that's all very much for a specific job purpose for the rest of their lives, for their careers. But education, I want a wonderful quotation from G.K. Chesterton: "Education is civilization passing its soul from one generation to the next." Do we not do any of that as well, or are we just creating economic units?
I think that years ago, I think when kind of, if you like, the world was a very different, much smaller place. And I think when generations of families used to, you know, work maybe for around Grimsby, work on the docks or work in the fishing industry, or for in Yorkshire we used to work in the mines, I think the generations used to pass on kind of those kind of, if you like, well, not really careers, but jobs, and that became the norm. And I think, you know, with the loss of those industries, people have had to look at other opportunities. And I think with the onset of technology, the onset of travel, the world is everyone's oyster now. So I think, you know, we all need to look much more widely and more globally at opportunities, because they are out there.
Yes, but the world is your oyster, and we can travel. We know we can hop on a cheap flight, or we can look at the world through a computer very easily. But if all you've been educated to do is a very high standard of riveting, then should we not give young people an access to a form of critical analysis, the habit of reading, a curiosity, not because it's useful, not because it's utilitarian, not filling empty vessels, but because without it, their knowledge of the world never extends really beyond a computer screen or the next horizon.
No, I do agree with you about that. I do think that we have a responsibility to try to educate our students by adding as much added value as possible so that they're better equipped for the future. I do absolutely agree on that. But I think you have to look at the position of that young person in particular, or that adult, and where they are on their learning pathway, on their learning journey, and help them. And I think the starting point, the motivation, is key to this. If you start them with, say, too high a level course, they're going to drop out, and then they'll feel a failure. So I think it is about working with our community to actually appropriately deliver programmes that they can achieve success and motivation, and then develop that, and absolutely develop that thirst for learning.
And that, it's not really, I mean, I'm not suggesting that they should be doing anything terribly difficult. I'm not saying that Grimsby Institute students should be translating Homer from the original Greek as soon as they get here or anything like that. But it's just that the purpose of education isn't simply to be capable of earning a living. It's capable of enjoying the life that living pays for. Yeah. And I suggest that perhaps some of the courses here, well, there aren't all that many courses here that enhance that.
Well, I think one of the things that we've tried to do over the last few years is added value or enhancement. And we do a number of different things. So it's not just about qualification. I think if we were just delivering qualifications, then we're doing what you're saying. And I don't believe it is about the employability skills. It's about the personal skills that employers are looking for as well. The team working, the positive kind of, if you like, effective communications. All of those things you don't get if you're just delivering a qualification.
We have, in the whole country, there's always a debate going on about the nature of education and the nature of a sort of level playing field, social mobility, equality and opportunity. A great number of people, perhaps rather nostalgic people, would say we should have a return to the grammar schools and where there is a meritocracy If you're very good, you're rewarded. If you're not very good, you don't get the same rewards. Would that not be useful at an institute like this?
Well, I mean, I think that some areas would say they have a great deal of success with that, but I'm not in for the elitist kind of education. I believe that, you know, all of our community deserve a chance, and I think they deserve an equal chance.
I'm not necessarily about elitism just for its own sake, but some people are better at things than others. If you're a brilliant musician or a brilliant artist, nobody's going to employ me as a concert violinist. I've asked. But I would get a better reward playing the violin if I were good at it. Here, everybody gets the same qualification. They pass, or they don't, but they get the same qualification, and talent isn't necessarily rewarded.
No, they do get the same qualification, but they have opportunities to progress with that qualification. And progression opportunities are really important. But one of the things during induction that I talk to all of our students about is the fact that they will most likely, if they do their work, they attend, that they will achieve that qualification. But what an employer is looking for, or what an admissions tutor at university is looking for, is more than that, is what's different about you, what's special about you. And therefore we encourage our students to look more widely, to participate in work experience, to do volunteering, to participate in the charities that we offer, to develop those wider skills, to make them stand out in the crowd.
And do you think we succeed in that?
I think to some degree we do, but we're not always going to be successful, everyone. But we've got to aim to try. That's what we should be doing.
And that answers my first question. That's the purpose of the college.
Absolutely.
Sue, I must stop you there just for a moment while we get to a break. Please join us again. I'm with Sue Middlehurst, Principal of Grimsby Institute, after these ads. Welcome back to Hot Topic. I'm still with Sue Middlehurst, Principal and Chief Executive of the Grimsby Institute. Sue, we were talking about the nature of qualifications a moment ago and how it's not just a qualification that employers are looking at. Are our qualifications now at the ages of 16, at the ages of 18, are they of the same quality that they were 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, I'm not going to get caught up in the discussion about this, because I think that this kind of argument's been going around with government ministers and with lots of people for, you know, a long time. Qualifications have evolved, you know, the whole of education has changed dramatically. You know, when you think of, you know, many people still talk about O-levels and it's GCSE, and now we're national curriculum and we're baccalaureates. There's an array of different qualifications now that different organisations participate in. I think that the qualifications do need to evolve, don't get me wrong, because I think learning evolves. I think job opportunities, jobs change, so we need to be kind of attuned to that. But I'm not going to get into a discussion about whether they're fit for purpose, because it's about employability or it's about progression to university. And if they're providing that vehicle, then I believe they're fit for purpose.
Well, the education changes, as you say, it develops, and people develop, the students develop, the civilization, if you can use Chesterton's phrase, develops. But certain things don't. Certain things are absolutely standard, immutable and permanent. For instance, if you find yourself talking to 16 or 18-year-olds and they can't write a grammatical sentence, and yet they've got qualifications, you have to doubt the quality of the qualification.
Yeah, I know. I think this is kind of an interesting dilemma, really, that you can get a qualification, but your level of English wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't be deemed competent, shall we say. And I think that is a significant challenge. And I think that one of the things that we work hard on is trying to really looking at, you know, because we teach obviously predominantly vocational qualifications,
of course, yeah.
Is that every lesson is an English or a maths lesson. So to contextualise, so to enable learners who've had quite a few years at school of not necessarily learning English and or mathematics to actually try a different way. So that's kind of the functional skills element that we do, and we actually have quite a lot of success with that. I think where young people see the benefit or see the purpose, they are responding.
Well, why is that? I mean, I have quite a lot of experience of FE and HE students at Grimsby Institute, and I have a great deal of respect for them as well, and a great deal of affection for them. But why is it that at the post 16, teachers here need to be turning every lesson into an English or a maths lesson, or the students turn up here at 16 who can't write a grammatical sentence, or who can't tell you the name of the capital city of France, or the name of the Prime Minister. Why is it that the education they get up to the age of 16 so often leaves them so bereft?
I think there's a number of different reasons, and I think that there's no simple answer to that. You know, it can be, you know, they're kind of in the environment that they live in with their families or their guardians that don't prioritise education or don't see any value in it. So I think that they come with this kind of, I believe, a myth that it doesn't add any value, I won't gain. It may be that they're not academic and yet the way that they're being taught is too academic for them, and they maybe believe they're out of their depth. They may really struggle because they may have a learning difficulty. I think there's so many complexities of why young people don't get engaged at school, because obviously they're not enjoying it, they're not engaged. And I think when they come here, they choose to come here. So whether that makes that fundamental difference, because they're choosing to do something that they obviously want to do. And, you know, they do perform better, and we can prove that with our statistics, that they do perform better. So I'm not 100% sure on the answer to that, except that maybe contextualising English and maths is a good way to do it.
Well, I mean, contextualising, that's one of those educators' words, isn't it? But I'm just thinking that if they've been to school for 11 years of compulsory education by the time they get to Grimsby Institute or any other further education college, hating maths and English, is it such a good idea to keep giving it to them when they get here? Does that not disincentivise them? Does that not risk losing them? No,
I think that's a really important point, because I think by the time that young people and adults, actually, because this does happen a lot with adults, and I think a lot of it is also this fear of failure. So I've done all of this and still not achieved, and you're going to make me do it again, you know, and I think it's very overwhelming for them. And I think it's the way that we have to, if you like, support those learners, and the way that we kind of try to work with them to encourage them. But I think we do have a responsibility, because I do believe it hampers their future.
In a meritocratic, what one hopes, and competitive society and economy, some people will fail, though, won't they? I mean, it would be unfair to suggest that failure is not part of the experience of living.
That is true, because not everyone can always achieve, but I think over time they can. And I think sometimes young people who haven't done so well at school, and adults for all sorts of reasons, can actually, with a bit more time, do get it. It's almost the penny drops, and they can get it. And sometimes in a different environment, they actually can respond. And, you know, I think we years ago used to call them late developers, or, you know, whatever. But, you know, interestingly enough, when they come here, they have a little bit of a different attitude. They do know they've got to do English and maths. We're very open and honest about that. So they're coming here knowing that. But I think that the fact that they then have either an ambition or career perhaps is enough motivation that most of them then do achieve. Now, most of them do achieve functional skills. I'm not saying they all achieve their GCSEs, and that's your point, but functional skills are quite an achievement still in English and maths.
One of your great success stories here is the Grimsby University Centre, the Dreaming Spires of Grimsby. And you run, I don't know how many courses, several courses here across the University Centre, and your college issues teachers' degrees that are then granted by other universities, and it's become very popular. Since David Blunkett was Secretary of State for Education earlier in this century, the ambition has been for 50% of school leavers to go to university and take a degree. Is that ambitious? Is that even desirable?
Well, I kind of support that, because I think that the opportunities, particularly with the University Centre and foundation degrees, which were very much more work-related, which you can take part-time, so you can still have a job, you can still support your family, and you can do a degree. You know, either kind of over 2 years, a little bit of flexibility often that we offer here with some support. So I think it is now more possible.
Firstly, if 50% of people have degrees, that devalues the currency of a degree. A degree once maybe was an indicator of a particular high standard of learning and of critical skills. If 50% of people have it, then it doesn't really say much. It's not informative about the holder of that degree.
Well, I'm going to disagree with this because you can start a degree now at kind of with foundation degrees, higher national certificates and diplomas at level 4. So, you know, we go up to level 7 and higher with, you know, doctorates and all sorts of things, qualifications. So there's
you're
quite
going to be teaching doctorates at Grimsby Institute? And
not yet.
Master's degrees?
Not yet. The plan is, in a few years' time, we might be able to, but there's certain hoops that we've got to go through to achieve taught degree awarding powers, which would enable us to do that. But there's quite a scale or a scope within the degrees, and there's a recognition that, you know, starting at kind of foundation degrees in levels 4 and 5 or higher national certificates, high national degrees, which employers really like because they're much more practical, you know, and they're kind of, you know, an accepted qualification.
But we still have graduate unemployment. We have graduates working in call centres. And it just does strike me that while a degree, and education, as I think we agreed earlier, is valuable in its own right, it isn't necessary, it's not there simply as a utilitarian path to something else. 50% of people with degrees in an economy with unemployed graduates, it seems like an unpaid investment, an unrewarding investment.
Yeah, but over the lifetime, I disagree with that because I think that, you know, everyone needs a job. So, you know, they'll be starting. But I believe that having had that degree, got that qualification, it will facilitate them during their lifetime better opportunities.
We're talking about the value of education, and all your teachers here are extremely highly educated, or else they wouldn't be teaching here. And yet teachers, I think, across the country don't feel all that valued. I know that the college, like every other public institution, is suffering money constraints. That's always going to be the case. A lot of teachers at Grimsby Institute are on 0 hours contracts or on very short-term contracts. Are people actually taking pay cuts at the moment at Grimsby Institute on the teaching side, the academic staff?
There's some pay realignment because we've introduced a new pay and reward strategy. And that, for most people, actually is given, particularly the academic staff, a little bit more money. So actually, I think that
nobody's getting less.
I think that there is a few people who, because of some designation of roles, will in a year's time potentially get something that's less. But that's because of structural issues that we're working through.
Do you think we value the teaching profession as it deserves in this country, or do we look back on our days at school and think, I wish I hadn't had to do all those times tables so often because it was a teacher who made me do it?
I think it's an interesting point because I think in some other countries they do seem to be, the status of teachers seem to be much higher and they do seem more highly valued. I certainly value the teachers.
I should hope so.
Not only in the Grimsby Institute, but as a career. I think that teachers do a fantastic job. And I think that they have to do much more than teach these days.
Well, they are. There's a sort of pastoral care element that comes into the whole thing, and perhaps replacing some of those things that we talked about that go on in schools.
I, for one, would like to, you know, actually look at, and that's why we are looking at a pay and reward strategy to, going forward, reward them more.
On that very mundane note, sorry, Sue, to leave you there, but we do have to stop. Thank you very much for watching Hot Topic. I'll have another one for you next week.